A European ethics court has ruled that Alta Fixsler, the 2-year-old Jewish toddler who was brain damaged at birth, is to be put on palliative care, i.e. is to be given pain management as she is eased into death. The ultra-Orthodox Jewish parents have contested this. However, the court the National Health Service hospital, which this toddler has lived in its whole life, argued that because the toddler cannot see or hear and has no chances of recovering those senses, according to the physicians at that hospital, it would be humane to kill the child. The law in the UK puts the welfare of children above the religious liberty of the parents or the parents' decisions, saying that if there was a child who would die without a blood transfusion, but a blood transfusion is against the parents' religious interests, then the state would step in and administer the blood transfusion. Now, that's one instance where the state would step in to preserve life. However, in this instance, both the court in the UK and then the higher European ethics court, which I'm not sure exactly how that whole hierarchy works, but has ruled that the child is to be put to death, basically. Now, this is very controversial because just recently, the father, who is a U.S. citizen, was able to secure a non-residence visa for the child to come over to America. And also, Israel has offered to take the toddler for continued medical care. Here's a quote. We're considering our next steps. The legal route is ended, but there is still the case that an agreement can be reached. So the child's life support has not been withdrawn. We don't know what the eventual outcome would be, but there are some really harrowing quotes. No disrespect to the NHS, but nobody would think that a local hospital in Manchester would have the same abilities and capability as a world-renowned hospital in Israel or the United States. Any parent would want to give the child a chance. If the UK judicial system does not think that the NHS has an obligation to continue care, this should not preclude the freedom and ability for Alta to be transported to the United States or Israel to have a second chance at life. And this was said by one of the friends of the family. While I am not a deeply religious person myself, I certainly can respect the rights of those who are religious to do what they think is best. And more importantly, I think, in this instance, they are certainly not harming their child by keeping the child alive. Although there is the argument that the child is in pain. So this is a very tough ethical situation to be in. I don't envy these parents at all. However, it makes me very uncomfortable that if these people were not fortunate enough to have the dual citizenship in the U.S., and we're not fortunate enough to be of Jewish faith, and so getting these offers from Israel, that the state says, we are not continuing care, and effectively you don't have the option to go out there and say, okay, well, I'm going to pay for this out of pocket and to keep my child alive. The state makes a decision that your child's life is not worth continuing, and that is that. Once the court has ruled, the court has ruled. And I think that this speaks a lot to the private versus public health care debate in the United States. While there might be some role for situations like the veterans' health care or health care that's provided by the state for the poor, when you move to a completely state-regulated healthcare system, there can be these deep moral questions that come up, because there are times when that families continue to provide care for, whether it be the elderly, whether it be somebody who's had a brain injury from which they cannot recover, whether they be a child or an adult. And it puts the state in a very, very ugly position, as we see here, of having to fight a family for the right to kill their child. Now, we don't know that that will happen here. Obviously, the family is still in negotiations, and they might be able to leave with their child, bring the child to America or Israel and continue treatment. But these issues are certainly ones that people who are concerned about the liberty of the individual, people who are concerned about the liberty of families, the rights of parents over that of the state to make decisions about what is best for their children need to be acutely aware of. And something that also needs to be taken into serious consideration when we consider debates around topics such as state-funded healthcare.